Am I doing roll call, Roxanne or Rich? Or the vote?
Rich does.
Okay.
I thought you just called the roll.
No, this is for the vote.
Oh,
Vote on the
For the approval of the
right.
agenda. We did
Okay.
roll call, now it's approval of the agenda.
Okay. Mrs. Tice,
Yes.
Mr. McGivern,
Yes.
Mr. Osterman.
Yes.
And I vote yes.
All right. So let us go into, the next agenda is going into study session.
Alrighty. Where's the music coming from?
That's
Okay. I'm like,
Nobody else is going.
I've been to 2
Hours
funeral
pushing
masses
around.
in the last 5 days too, so I'm like.
You know what, you can just lighten up there.
I'm like, where is that music coming from? I'm back at work. Okay, so again, we needed to just meet so that we could talk about our district goals. And so going down memory lane, if you recall, and I did give you a copy of the email that Monica sent, which was the email that had all the attachments on it. So I just kind of want to reiterate, hopefully you had a chance to read it and review it. So we talked about having, when we were looking at my superintendent evaluation, realizing that we need to make sure we have our district goals so that my evaluation is indicative of the district goals, and as board goals are developed later on, then they're also aligned with district goals. Okay, so as we were looking at it, so remember that developing the strategic plan and identifying priorities and goals is an ongoing process. So we have all these documents. The state requires us to do our needs assessment in March and April. From our needs assessment, then we have to conduct our priorities and goals, which turn into the LIAP and the SIAP, which are these two that are in the ADE website. The LIAP and the SIAP is the school plan, the LIAP is the district plan that supports the school goals. So in larger districts, every single school has a SIAP, and then the district office compiles all the information into one big, large district plan to support each site. Now, we're one school, one district, so we have one SIAP from our school, and then we have the LIAP that's developed. Everything that's in the LIAP and the SIAP has to be documented in terms of how we spend our funds. Okay, so how we spend federal, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, and ESSER has to be written in the LIAP and the SIAP division.
Sure, I've got it.
Okay, you have them, okay. So does that make sense so far?
For a single school, single district, why would ours be different between SIAP and LIAP?
Because that goes back to, again, what the principal and the teachers are going to do is different than what the district administrators are going to do as the superintendent, as business office, as special ed director, which are director. So how do we support at a district level, the school level goals? Does that make sense? It's confusing.
If we're drawing it all from the needs assessment,
Right.
we're drawing both documents from the needs assessment, correct?
Well, technically, the LIAP is developed off of the SIAP. Because we do the fishbone with the needs assessment.
Okay.
Teachers determine, along with the principal and the curriculum committee, and all the teachers are in, we all do the fishbone, we all identify our priorities and needs. Then that determines what we need to spend money on. What do we need funds for or not? Then we have to go in and develop the action steps as a school to determine our priorities and goals. Then I have to go in as a superintendent and look at what the SIAP says and say, okay, at the district level, what do we have to do to make that happen? And there may or may not be funds attached to, like the LIAP would be our central office administrators, staff development that supports what the school level is doing. Okay, and as far as the state goes, so this SIAP and LIAP is new because you might remember hearing the word elite in ADE. So we used to have to put this into elite, and in elite, you could go in and you could retire your goals and add new goals, or at the end of the year, you have to put if they were in progress or not, and then we would do it that way. This is our second year with the LIAP and the SIAP. So last year, we had to input everything into a different system through ADE, no longer using Elite. This program does not allow you to carry over goals. So this year, we had to retype all of the action steps for the LIAP and the SIAP again. I believe that this year, they still haven't figured out how to let us roll over, so we're gonna have to re-input again. Okay, so all of this is work between May and June 30th, because then we start to draw down July 1st with new grant funds. So the teachers and Mrs. Cuevas are constantly referring to the SIAP, okay? And if you remember when we did these priorities and goals, and this existing, are the strategic priorities and goals that are in the SIAP and the LIAP as well. So you can see that in the last 5 years, goals don't change dramatically. It's the immediate work and how we get there and the action steps that have to change. So if you recall last year, it was huge in our needs assessment that teachers needed professional development time, right? And that's when we came to you as a board to say we need Wednesday collaboration because we can't possibly hold teachers accountable to everything that's in the SIAP and the LIAP without time to talk, to analyze data, to go through specific training and get everybody on the same page. Okay, so once we did all of the work this past year and we developed one thing we had been talking about as a board and is our strategic plan. So from our needs assessment, from our NIAP, our SIAP, we worked together as a team to develop our strategic plan, which I reviewed in July when we were going over my evaluation. What we didn't do was ever bring this document for board approval. That's why you all were unclear on what our true district goals were, on what we were operating on. Okay? So what I did, so whatever we develop today, whatever we decide is our district goals, we can change this document, but I'd like to get it approved in February. Okay, at next week's board meeting, so that we can continue our work. So in your packet that you received, there's this document that says draft, okay? So what I did was I took our goals from our strategic plan. Yes. Oh, did we not give them the packet, Stacy? Yes. I think that they're in this packet, just I don't confuse you, I guess. Okay. There it is, thank you. Okay. Sorry about that. So what I did is I took the 5 goals out of our strategic plan. In our strategic plan, there's the annual measures at the end of each goal. I tried to take the measure that's most important, ongoing, that's gonna identify whether we're being successful or not as a district. Okay, even though there's a lot of measures, there's like 4 to 5 different measures in each goal, I tried to pick one so that whatever we put on our website or whatever we have is more detailed, right, than this big document. So that's kind of what I would like us to have our conversation on are these true indicators? Are you good with the goals that we've identified as a district to continue our work?
And this was all developed by everybody, down from the teachers, us, the administration.
Leadership
Everybody
teams,
said-
curriculum committee, admin advisory, everybody that worked on the needs assessment, as we developed the SIAP and the LIAP, we worked on this document.
So everyone except the board. Did we actually work on this?
You didn't work on it?
Not at all.
No.
Can I just have a question?
Mhm.
Would you, if we have a SIAP and a LIAP, one school and one district, why is it necessary to have 2 more documents that outline goals and strategies? I'm looking at 4 different documents, all related to goals and strategies and I don't understand why we have 4.
So the reason why we have 4, I mean, I would love to be able to have one. ADE and federal require this,
Okay,
okay? As a district, boards and superintendents operate on strategic plans that are either 3 to 5 year plans that get revisited and updated.
but isn't that what the SIAP is? That's district.
It's district, but this is a 1 year. This is a 1 year doc that has to be done every year.
So you're
Okay.
saying this is kind of like the master,
This is the master plan.
All right.
Okay? This, with priorities and goals, helps the principal and the teachers break it down to even a more specific level than the SIAP. Right? Because this is what we spend our money on, what we're using it for. This is boots on the ground, we teach and enrich, staff development, daily things that we do.
So this is dated 2025, does that mean that
When
we
you-
revisit it every year just to make sure or not? I mean, you can't, right?
You can, so this is a living document, but it is a 5 year plan. Most superintendents do 3 to 5 years because that's when superintendents change, boards change. So, but you have a guiding document. So if you remember when I was first hired, our plan looked like this. And it was a 3-year plan. It was a 2-year plan. Then COVID, we didn't do one. So then we developed this one for 5 years.
Last summer,
Yes,
July.
yes.
Kind of back what Rich said, it's
It's a
gonna
big,
be a lot of maintenance just to make sure they all jive, you know?
and that's why the board is really focused on your overarching goals, your 5 strategic plans, with the main measures of what we can report out. We will have in July, and you will see it, because we have a document that has all the measures on the plan, the annual measures. So in our July meeting, here's the strategies. The annual measures are going to be in a doc with all the information that we've been analyzing along the way and putting in here, so that we can sit as a leadership team and with at the board and review what we've collected, where we are, and how we did in terms of our annual measures. Is there something else that we need to measure? Did something change? Are we looking at the right thing? As programs come and go, we will be analyzing different things along the way. But the goals are typically very similar across the nation and the state in what strategic plan goals entail. The 5 areas. High-performing students, high-quality staff, inclusive culture, responsive organization, and collective governance. Those are the main overarching goals. And then I took it a step further, and in my evaluation, as we talked about, I went and highlighted on my current evaluation, highlighted what goal it would be addressing. Okay. And one comment was, well, why not take out all the other stuff that doesn't relate to the specific goals? But all
These
the
goals?
other,
These goals?
yes.
Yes.
But my evaluation is truly what the superintendents have to do and know. That's not necessarily gonna all be in your strategic plan, but it's daily operations and organization and what we need to do. So boards usually adopt a strategic plan. Some boards have board goals and some don't. It's up to our board. The board goals, if you decide to develop them, would be what are you as a board going to be committed to do to allow us to work our strategic plan and our district goals? What is the board committed to do to allow us to continue to do our work?
And Andrew, do you ever recall the board having board goals? Or did the board always just, work in line?
Yeah, it's been many years, quite a few years since we've had one, or updated. I mean, there is a document somewhere.
But remember 2 years ago when we went to Bolt, it was the first time that they were really emphasizing for districts and boards to develop board goals. Prior to that, it wasn't, I hadn't heard about it at the district level where I worked, and goals, the board goals were primarily, everybody has a different interpretation of what boards need to have in order to support strategic plans. Remember they highlighted Nogales when we were there? They were one of the only ones. When I looked up board goals, Queen Creek, Cave Creek, and Queen Creek in Phoenix have them. Nogales does, that are posted and visible. Other boards say they have them, but they're not like on their websites.
When we would meet at, down here, La Posada, we would go over board goals typically. But we're talking 4 or 5 years ago.
But I think today we're here to discuss district goals.
District
All
goals,
right,
yes.
so that's.
Yeah, so that we can determine later. So right now, what I'd like to do is determine the district goals. Are you good with them? Do you need clarification? Do you feel like we need to add something else in the measure? What are your thoughts?
Well, let's take it from the top. Do you want to work from the blue one or just the highlighted version? That one?
Well, I think we could work from this one, but I mean, they have to work hand in hand, because if you see an annual measure on the blue one, then we can add to it or tweak it, change it. So I'm gonna stop talking and you can talk.
Steve, I spent quite a bit of time going through this whole thing.
Yeah, I tried to.
Other than this one, which I just got a couple days ago I don't have any problem with the goals as they're stated on a broad level basis.
Yeah, I didn't.
What I have a problem with is how they are specific measured. How often are we specifically measuring them? And are we dealing with specifics? As an example, and I go through this, and I think some of this stuff has already been done. When it says strategies for high-performing students, develop and implement a comprehensive curriculum management process to provide system-wide direction for design, delivery, monitoring, evaluation of the curriculum. As far as I know, we've already done that. If we haven't and it still needs to be developed, then I think we need a target date. And that's what I have throughout this thing, is that I don't see target dates. Even on this, it's got prior status and current status. But it doesn't have specific dates when we want some things to be done. Still in this high-performing students area, it says develop comprehensive program for exceptional education, gifted education, and learning, English learners. By when? When do we expect those things to be in place? And when are we going to evaluate whether we have them or not? If we put this in place now and we don't look at it and evaluate it until June and determine whether or not we made any progress with it.
So this is why this is a living document, because developing and implementing a comprehensive curriculum. We're in year 1 of math.
Right.
So it's ongoing that we're monitoring progress, staff development, looking at data, looking at assessments, looking at reteach and enrich, looking at our benchmarks in turn for the AZ merit. This year, ELA. So we're going through. Next year will be the first adoption. We have not adopted a curriculum in science and social studies because we always prioritize reading and math. So that's next. But those are on, so I guess it's hard to say, like even SPED with curriculum. So we've already ordered SPED curriculum out of ESSER 3. With ELA, they have an intervention program for SPED students that aligns with our benchmark with the reading curriculum, which we are looking at purchasing, getting a quote, so that part of the house is ongoing. With the gifted and talented, we're assessing kids now for the assessment. And then we're going to have to look at what's our plan, who's going to service the kids that qualify. As we grow, we will need a teacher to teach gifted, which has budget implications, right? So they're all kind of ongoing. So I know what you're saying. It's just how
Roxanna, I dealt
detailed.
with this for so often when it said status ongoing.
Mhm.
And there's never anything that says, when does it have to be done by when? So when are we going to have a comprehensive program for gifted or exceptional education? Okay, maybe we've got to do the testing, which we're doing now. So we set February as the target date for testing. Then we set April to determine whether we have to have a specific gifted teacher, which then the board is responsible for saying, can we resource this from a funding standpoint? And then we determine these things. We have target dates that are driving actions. If we just put ongoing, the board's never going to know.
But, okay, so then that's where we report to you every board meeting. We're reporting our progress on all that we do. We're reporting on our formative data. We're reporting on what we're doing with SPED. We're reporting on where we are.
I don't disagree with that.
Right.
But that still doesn't, in my opinion, eliminate the need for a target date.
So where would you want us to put the target dates?
You tell me.
Well, I just think
When is testing going to be done?
There's so many, and we have our testing dates on our calendar. So I'm just saying, how thick do you want this document to be?
Well,
Because
going back to this document,
maybe on, like, this is not a schedule, this is not a calendar, this is just what the goals are, and it's gonna change as needs change, and as we reach certain goals and whatever. How about on this strategic priorities and goals, add a column that says, projected completion date?
So it might be in the
And then we can
objective portion, not in.
But a strategic plan always has dates. The purpose is a plan that we measure by. So we just threw out something about English learners. Well, this doesn't link back to the Arizona audit, which shows that we only have 3% of English learners. So it needs to be directly linked to data, a goal, and a target date. Or else we're just making a plan that has a moving target and it becomes like housework at my house. We'll do it whenever we get to it. So there has to be a plan that we have to, we have any strategic plan and any goals and strategies associated with the strategic plan are going to have dates. They're going to either have metrics in the form of some quantitative method or a qualitative method of either a date or something like that. This is just putting a bunch of words on paper, and there's no way to hold anybody accountable.
If I may add something, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with the content here. It just seems to me that we have a significant percentage of our kids in this district that have spent the last 2 years in their living room or in front of a computer or something other than being in this classroom. Now, doesn't it seem somewhat reasonable that we should have at least an intermediate, something in the very near term, the next 6 months or something, as a goal to try and get not only the kids back into the classroom, but to get kind of people caught up? I mean, we've been spinning our tires for a couple of years here. I mean, I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. I'm, like I said, I'm not disagreeing with these goals at all. But we've had something in the last 2 years go down that has never happened in any of our lifetime.
The achievement gap.
And kids are, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think kids are probably scattered all over the place in terms of knowledge, and some people may be far behind, and I know is there something going, are we gonna go with the summer program? Is that on? There's money allocated for that, or about to, or
Yes.
trying to, or there is, okay.
Yeah,
It
we
seems-
already sent the email out to get teachers to see who
Okay.
wants to teach summer school, so that's the plan. Again, our charge will be getting the kids here
Well,
that need to be here.
that's my
which
point,
is-
put the
yeah.
cart before the horse. You're talking about all these goals, which are fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but I think we kind of need to get things caught up first, as a short term. And hopefully that's,
Well, I think that's covered a little bit. Growth and on track is measured by the MAP assessment, administered 3 times a year, which is what
see where they stand, sure.
to see where they stand and
Yep.
see what their improvement.
But what's an increase? Is it 0.5? Is it 3 percentage points? Is it at grade level? How do you measure that? Increase is meaningless as a word by itself.
So that's,
I like the goals, but
uh-huh,
I like the goals, don't get me wrong.
uh-huh.
But we're talking about goals, we're talking about strategies, and we're talking about tasks. You're talking about reporting to us on tasks, not a strategy. When you say implement and align Arizona college and career ready standards for all core and elective courses, by when?
So we can add those, because it's all year. I mean, that's our annual, but I know what you're saying. If we put target dates or completion dates, right, that's expected to be done.
I also I'd like to comment, I would hope none of these ever get completed. It's kind of like a game of golf. Can you play a perfect game of golf? I guess you score like 18. Is that perfect? You're never gonna, like, it's something you're always going
Right.
to improve on. As soon as you become perfect, you're gonna find more ways to make it better.
Right.
So a lot of these things never get completed.
But I agree too with what everyone's saying, but there are certain things that putting target dates would be extremely beneficial for us to do for things that we haven't had yet started yet, such as the gifted program. So having the target date is when we're gonna have testing, a projected target date, and then a projected target date is to, okay, when are we gonna start the discussions of how are we gonna create the program or who's going to be teaching the program, which we have some ideas on that already, but
'Cause you
I
could
think
have-
setting us so that we have a timeline so that by the end of 2025,
Well, especially something like what I
we've
kind of said,
completed many things.
if you have something that's going to require finding the money for a position,
Yes.
doesn't that need to happen like before July?
And like Mr. O'Leary said, if we have the target dates, then we would be able to look and say that they know, okay, pretty soon we're gonna be discussing.
So when you
Higher
look at the
than
SIAP and the LIAP, they do have timelines there because it's an annual. So we could easily attach timelines to our strategic plan as well.
So are we hoping to have, what are the gifted and talented up and running by next school year? Are we going to have a teacher and kids that test into?
Well, and that's where we have to do our cost benefit analysis, because if we only have, 5, 6 kids identified as gifted K-8 across the board, and we pay a teacher, one teacher salary for 5 students, or are we gonna, that's something we need to talk about, are we gonna do an after school or a pull out or something to pull those kids together, but how effective will it be in a K-8 model with 6 kids? That's usually the struggle at sites to get personnel.
And then you have Ms. Romanelli, who's endorsed, I'm endorsed. So if we have to find ways to work with it, if we don't have the funding for it, we want to make sure that we're giving our students.
But then again, you're pulling Ms. Cuevas, who's the principal, who has to monitor all this stuff.
Well, I think that's down in the weeds. I think the
Yes.
question is,
Yes.
these 5 goals right here, do they align with that mission statement? The answer is either yes or no. If the answer is no, then we don't have a goal or we need to change the mission statement.
Yeah, we believe they
But
do.
having the dates, I agree, is gonna help hold accountability. We've been talking about gifted and talented for how long? And you can go back and say, well, you said back in May of 2020, we were gonna have this implemented in the spring of 2021. What's up? Okay, well, now we know you mentioned 3 or 4 steps. I think we can all identify that specific one is a great example. Is okay, well, that's our model for the rest of these things. And if you get to April and you're like, hey, May isn't happening, okay. Then we look at it and say, what do we need to do with it?
And the learning from that is we either need to correct how we set our targets, or we need to go back and do a hot watch and find out why we missed our target.
Yeah, because some we're gonna be dead on, other ones we're gonna miss completely.
No, we're not.
I think,
What did, Greg, you wanted to say?
Yeah, so it pains me a little bit to say, but I completely agree with Mr. O'Leary and Mrs. Cuts. Okay, I do agree that there should be dates.
I know, right?
Just so that you know you're not the first.
I do agree that, yes, we should have target dates, but maybe not on everything, because not everything is the same. It shouldn't be measured the same. If you go back and you look at develop a comprehensive curriculum, I don't think that's something you want us stopping doing after we've reached that goal in 3 years. I'm sure the board in 5 years from now would appreciate us to have this as an ongoing goal versus, we completed it.
But some of your other metrics will drive that process. So if we're using a certain math curriculum and it doesn't seem to be producing the kind of results that we want it to produce,
Then we need to.
then obviously we're going to relook at that and have a certain timetable that, is the curriculum the problem?
Which would be why that would be an ongoing goal,
Yes.
because you would want us to continuously look at it, 5 years from after introducing this math curriculum. What has those results been from those kids that started out in 3rd grade to where they're at in 8th grade? Give us a good set of measurables to determine if that math curriculum is actually what we need. And the same when we adopt the ELA.
10%.
And also, some of these are gonna be driven by data. So I wouldn't say put a time frame on when we're going to put, a comprehensive curriculum together for our gifted students, because we may do our testing and find out we've got 3 kids. Or we could do our testing, find out we have 30 kids. The path to success is 2 different paths to complete that. So some of it's data-driven, based solely on, the results.
So that's why I like the sport, because it has a definition of what metrics we're going to use. It also has prior status and current status. And I mean, the only thing that I think is missing in that thing is what's the next step? And if we're not on track, what's the target date for this? This document, to me, is a much better format as far as establishing what our goals are, what are the actions that we're gonna take, what measurement are we gonna use, and what are the target dates?
Right, that's why that's the one we use all the time. That's the one that we refer to the teachers and Deanna, because it's specific.
It's a
But
supplement.
that's not a strategic plan, right? That's our priorities and action steps that
Well,
are.
just strategic priorities and goals
Right,
for the 21 to 25 period.
Right, because this is the overarching strategic plan. That's
That's our
how do we
roadmap
get
on how to
there?
get
That's the roadmap. That tells you what we're doing, what our dates are. I don't know that a strategic plan, there's some measures here, some things that can have a timeline, but that blue document is the one that has to have the specific timelines. That when we do our new needs assessment and we develop what we need and we look at the SIAP and the LIAP, and then we continue or retire those goals and add more. That's more of our ongoing document.
But that's not the document we're talking about today, correct?
Well, no, we're just talking about our district goals,
These two.
the 5 goals, yes.
Okay.
And what we want to adopt as a district to say, these are overarching goals. How we get there is the other documents. But I want you to feel comfortable with the way this is written, and if you feel that we need to go through and look and add specific timelines to certain pieces of this, but you're right, Greg, so much of the district plan says continuous and ongoing because they're things that we look at and we're reviewing constantly. Annually, after benchmarks, after state assessments, during mini formatives that teachers give, determines are we teach and enrich.
Okay, then if I go back to this document, these are the specific goals. These are the actions we're gonna take to get there. So I think that some of these goals on here need to be more specific,
Okay.
as it's stated in here. Increase student achievement as measured by NWA MAP assessment. To what level? That should be here.
10%, so I'm here.
So it's on our SIAP, and here we were talking about closing the achievement gap right by growth. That's why we wrote students in each grade level cohort. Okay, the first one, increase student achievement, ELA, math, and language youth, growth and on track as measured by NWA MAP assessment administered 3 times a year. So when it says growth and on track, that's where we're looking at all of the kids, did they grow from the first assessment to the end of the year assessment, but we look at it in the mid-year right now. And then are we increasing the kids that are on track? So that's what
Okay,
we
but
wanted.
how does that relate to the fact that we wanted to see a 3-point improvement at every grade level in math and English based on easy merit?
So then students in each grade level cohort, 3rd through 8th grade, will demonstrate an increase in meeting and exceeding the standards along with demonstrating growth on state assessment. So when we analyze the growth, we're gonna say, did we move 3% of our kids into
But the
on
three
track.
percent needs to be in here, is my point. That's the goal.
That's the measure.
That's what we measure.
Yeah, and we can't, we
And that's
had,
what we're basing, that's what we're evaluating against, is that specific goal. Is a 3-point improvement in actually, I think it's specific to AZ Merit, not NWEA MAP.
well, so we did have it in there. The thing is that NWA MAP gives us a different, we're operating on grit scores, and then state assessment is operating on meeting and exceeding standards.
Roxanne, I agree with you, but
No, I know,
this
I'm
is
just-
also intended to align with the
Right.
superintendent evaluation.
Right,
The superintendent evaluation does not relate to NWEA, or that's on the performance pay area. It specifically talks about AZ Merit and AZ Merit only.
no, we aligned it to the formative, to NWA and AZ Merit. It's not one or the other, because we're analyzing both.
We should be analyzing
Right.
both. But just saying that we want to see improvement. So if we go from X to Y, and that's growth, then we can say that we achieved our goal. Whether it was 3% or 10% or 1% or 0.5%, if we got improvement, then we achieved our goal.
Roxanna, this is meeting and exceeding the standards. What are the standards?
On the state assessment,
Right.
reading and math standards.
Well, I'm just wondering if the information Mr. Alry is looking for is in there. And I understand we want to keep this one page, right?
Well, and then going back to the question, because when we analyze state assessment data, we're looking at, when they determine letter grades, they look at your percentage of kids that meet and exceed standards. They look at your percentage of kids who have gone from minimally proficient to proficient or proficient to on track, right, to exceeds. They look at our special education students and if they've made progress. They look at our ELL students if they've made progress. So there's all these factors that go into this crazy formula. They look at attendance rate, and from all that, they determine our letter grade. So you have a special ed bilingual student, they count 3 times in the formula. Because they're in the SPED formula, they're in the EL formula, and they're in the general population data. You get a gifted student, they're again in that realm. So it's just very technical on how you determine and how we determine progress as a school every year. Because we can't say that all of our students are going to be at 80% mastery, meeting and exceeding standards in 3 years.
Why not?
Because we have special ed students who's, even though they're growing,
14%.
right? Even though they're growing, they're not going to be meeting and exceeding kids in standards ever on AZ Merit. They'll close their achievement gap, and we're watching them, but it's not realistic for us to say that 80% of our kids are going to meet and exceed standards at Continental
So what is realistic?
cohort growth as we watch.
And I think it's important that, since you said growth, that we define what we're looking at as growth. Are we talking growth as a kid going from minimally proficient to proficient? Or are we talking growth as a kid that was 50 points away from being proficient is now 4 points away from being proficient? Because that still shows growth. So I think it's important to define what we're saying growth actually is, because growth could be quite a few different things.
I don't want to go to what she just said. If the state doesn't measure it, why are we?
They don't measure, it doesn't count if it's, so we had a student who was minimally proficient and they went up 28 points, but they're still
Minimally
proficient, so it doesn't move
It doesn't
anywhere.
matter
And they talk, no,
No,
it's the growth for moving from minimally to partially to proficient to highly proficient.
So there's only
It's the
4
jumps.
steps in the staircase.
It's the jump.
That's
So
it.
what we're working on is tracking the cohorts, and we've been studying and analyzing how they've grown, kind of how, if there's been backslides, if there's students that, especially it was interesting to see when we had our school closure, that there were quite a few students who went from highly proficient, and you could see just by looking, because we have printed them out, each cohort where you just see the slide of a bunch of, big percentage goes from highly into proficient, proficient into partially. And then some of them, the minimally proficient stayed the same, and we started to analyze to see why was the minimally proficient, some of them staying the same. And it goes back to some of our special education students who have been throughout that cohort. They're showing growth, but they're still within that minimally proficient.
But with few exceptions, Deanna, every test for math and ELA, we have less than 50% of our kids that are proficient or highly proficient. Less than 50%. So it's not just SPED that's driving this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can say that, you know, we've got SPED students that just aren't ever going to make it in 3 years. Well, what about the non-SPED students that aren't making it?
So that's why we decided, we were starting to look, what is the pattern, what's going on here? Was what we're trying to figure out.
And then what we're trying to do is we're trying to measure things we can't control.
Yeah.
And so that's the big challenge. We're trying to measure things like the kid that shows up here that maybe didn't have dinner last night or breakfast this morning and has on 2 days ago clothes and things. So we're, you know, I think we really need to focus on what it is we can measure and be successful. I mean, I don't think anyone can argue with any of these goals, although I'm sitting here kind of laughing to myself because the one thing I came up with was that I wanted to move to a paperless board. That was my one goal. I wanted us to go paperless because I have in front of me right now about $5 worth of printing. All of this is in color, and this, even though it doesn't look like in color, it's in color, and this is going for about 25 cents, and, you know, so none of us can argue with any of the goals. I mean, we want high-performing students, we want high-quality staff, and an inclusive culture, and responsive organization, which is where the paperless would come in, and collective governance. But I think what we're talking about is how do we organize that? You know, we've got this document, and then we've got this document for the state, and we've got this document for the feds, but we really want it on one document, and I already had this in an email, and I had this in an email, and I'm not even sure what this is, but it was in the email too. I think what we need to do today is decide, are those 5 goals what we want? And I don't think anybody could argue with that. And we're kind of getting down into the weeds. We can't control from minimally proficient to proficient. That's the way it's measured. That's the way it is. Get on board. I realize that you want to be able to say Johnny went from he took these 3 little steps, and we're really glad, and we're showing that. But the bottom line is nobody cares but you and mom and dad. When we're reaching out to the community, they're concerned when they're looking at moving here and fleeing TUSD, they're looking at why are 44% of 5th graders minimally proficient? That's what they want to know.
I had a conversation, I'm talking several months ago, maybe over a year ago, with an individual that has their kindergartner, Brendan Kinder, they put him in Anson because they had a higher grade, at least at that time, than Continental did.
Yeah.
And so that's what parents are looking at when they're choosing school districts, where they want to live, where they want their kid to go to school. Now, you know, our open enrollment law in Arizona certainly facilitates that. But we should be the school of choice.
And we are. So the thing is, when you work in a school and you know how that works, we don't buy our houses based on where our kids what the letter grade is of the school, because we know what that means. You can have, we know what that means, and that doesn't mean the success of the school. It doesn't, and I tell parents, the best thing you could do, it doesn't even matter where you're moving, is that you are watching your child's progress, that you're doing your job with your child. You make sure that the teacher fit, know what teachers you're putting your kids in, because kids have different personalities and click with different teachers. And you won't have to worry if you do your part as a parent and you're setting those expectations for your kids and you're communicating with the teacher, regardless of where you go, your child is gonna do well.
And
But we have
absolutely,
no control over that.
Right.
Absolutely no control. But what we do have control over is the teacher we put in the classroom, the equipment that we issue. When you go through here and you read some of these things, recruitment and retention, teacher retention, fill rate of certified positions, employee satisfaction climate surveys. Well, what does that mean? I mean, I've seen climate surveys where somebody, the organization has 25%. So what does that mean?
Yeah, and again, how do we push our parents to take those climate surveys and do them? We've increased the amount of parents who have done them every year, but it by far is not 80% of our parents don't answer the survey, because if they're mad, they're gonna answer the survey. If they're happy, they're like, oh, everything's fine, I don't need to fill this out.
But that's kind of a standard,
Right.
that's across all industries.
Right, but yet that's what, I guess we have so much ongoing work every single day that we're doing, because we're constantly looking at our teachers and what they're doing, like our learning walk tomorrow, for example. We're trying to align effective strategies school-wide, and unless you pull teachers to watch each other and listen to us give feedback and give feedback to teachers and to kids, we're not going to be able to close that achievement gap. But that's been a 3-year process. By the end of this year, every teacher will have been observed and will have been part of the feedback group doing the observation. And teaching has changed, because they realize, okay, they're serious about what they're expecting, because we're in a room like this saying, when you did this, your kids did this. When you said this, your kids did this. And this is the end all goal. So it's just, for us, I think as school leaders, it's very hard to quantify and put, I get metrics and measures and timelines, but there's so much that's ongoing that it's just really hard to pinpoint what is gonna truly make the difference and get us over, because it's the parent, the student, the teacher, the leadership, the curriculum, the training.
And that's the same thing in every industry. Every industry that I work in, I see the exact same thing. And everything is ongoing. Your first goal of high-performing students is ongoing. That's forever. Your second goal of recruiting and attracting high-quality staff. Forever. That's going to go forever. And an inclusive culture. I'm not even sure what that means. Responsive organization. I would tighten that up. Collective governance. All of those are things that we certainly want to do. It's the strategies, how we're going to get there, how we measure that, how we know when we're there. Or when we're getting close to it.
Right.
And even if if we got all of our kids at 80%, what would we all be sitting here talking about? How do we get to 85? So, but it's just setting those targets so that we know how to get to the 85. And, I almost feel like our best bet would have been to play one of those Saturday morning movies, the one where the teacher goes into the inner city school and everybody throws stuff at him, and then he teaches them how to sing or something like that, and they become an A school and get national fame. Let's look at what they did. How did they do that? What are the strategies that they used? Well, okay, that's a great point. There's nothing in here that talks about music and athletics. And you know what? Some of your kids are gonna do well in that.
Athletics is a great way for kids to go to college that otherwise would not have a single chance in health.
And it's a
And,
great way to keep bad kids off the street.
Our students going into Walden are at a disadvantage.
Why?
We don't have, we can't use our hurdles for track because they are older than I am and to give them all fitness and other things. Got science teachers coaching soccer.
But we had the Walden Grove soccer team that went to nationals, had like 6 or 7 that went to state, had 6 or 7 of our Continental kids on the team.
But
So,
that goes back to
No, it's-
responsive organizations. We have a whole list of all these athletics and clubs. We bought new vans, we did all this other stuff, but we can't run hurdles because our kids will get hurt and get splinters.
well, that's the first I've heard of that, so.
That was years ago. I don't know if we still have that,
Yeah,
but
we still
yeah,
have those.
when Aaliyah was on track, they were like, oh, you see that girl's legs? She's like throwing this on. We're like, oh, you're gonna kill it in the hurdles. Oh, we're not allowed to use those.
And that's something where we're, with our sports and our clubs promoting, we look at the percentage of kids that are participating. Do we have more girls than boys? What's
But we
happening?
never talk about that.
Well, we do, but when Mr. Nathan presents sports data, he does. And when you look at achieve excellence in academics, character, and skills, I mean, it's the whole comprehensive goal of,
But we never talk about it. That's the mission, but it's not in here. It's not in our goals or our strategies.
there's so many goals and strategies that we
And I
have that I
think we
don't
need
know
to
where.
take responsibility for that because, here we are blindsiding. We have, oh, we're concerned. And we're like, oh, I've never heard that before. But
Yeah,
that's kind of on us. And I think a lot of these complaints, instead of just saying, why don't you do it this way? It's like, okay, Roxanne, I see that you want a gifted and talented class. What can we do to make that happen by next year? Keep us informed. This is the due date. We want on that. And we, as a board, we need to take that leadership. And so these are great goals. Let's see how well they're implemented.
And I think that goes over to what board goals are, and it's not my job to tell you if you don't have hurdles. That's your gym teacher's job and your athletic director. And if they didn't do that, that's the conversation you need to have with them. If they tell you it was because they didn't have any money, that's who you have the conversation with next. That's the management piece of that. We don't do that.
right. No, for sure, we have tons of tax credit money for extracurricular activities, so there's no reason why we don't have what we need, so we will
But
definitely.
there could be more to that as well, like are the other schools in our whatever group of schools we compete against, whatever that's called. Maybe they don't have hurdles either, so maybe that's why we never replaced them.
Well, our basketball girls are undefeated, and the game is tomorrow. 2 games left.
Yep.
And they're undefeated, so,
So much fun to watch, by the way.
yes, so we will be there tomorrow.
So going back to this high-performing students district goals, we are measuring and looking at the growth through NWE map, which helps us then determine where our students are projected to end the school year. By doing that, we have plans in place that we want to enact, which is this school year, what we're planning to do is at the end of next school year, we want to be giving, these are our plans, during pre-service days, we will give teachers, this is pre-service like in the summertime, when we're coming in to start the new school year, we're going to be giving the teachers the 2021-22 post-test results. And they'll be getting the state results of the students in their classes that they're getting. That way, they have a snapshot of the rosters of the students that they're getting and where they are ability-wise and where they are academically, So then that way, we will be able to prepare, they can plan and prepare as they plan for that first month. First month is when they take their first benchmark, which is considered our baseline benchmark. So then we know where we need to plan from there. But to start the school year, when they're here a week before the students start, they will already have a snapshot of where their students are on their roster so that they can start planning interventions with them from the get-go. At the end of each benchmark, we're going to be having them go over what their students are. They'll be producing a online calendar to us, breaking up their students in benchmarks, weekly by month as to what they're going to be doing intervention-wise into intervention groups and what standards they need to be retaught. So when we talk about what is our plan for high performing, there's so many things to do, but it's just keeping it as simple as we need to use the blueprints that the state has provided to us, which we now have the blueprints that have been refreshed for the new Arizona academic standards assessment, which is, it's not Easy Merit anymore. It's ASA,
It keeps
or I don't want to
changing.
say it
We're comparing
differently.
apples to,
I just have to change the
you
name.
know, it's like,
So, those blueprints are gonna be huge for us, because before we head into next school year, they're gonna be able to have us strategically map out what we need to teach our students, what's our bang for our buck, as far as power standards that need to be taught upfront and then spiral throughout the school year. I'm feeling more confident, especially with this school year, because it's been a lot more normal than the past 2 school years, that we're able to start strategizing and getting this stuff ready for next year, and we've already started implementing it with our teachers. We already began to go over the blueprints, and when you look at the blueprints for the state test, it'll tell you exactly what percentages in mathematics. If it's measurement, maybe it's only gonna be 35, yes, 10% is gonna be on measurement. So you know what, right now, we're not gonna be teaching measurement as much as we need to be teaching fractions in 5th grade, so that they need to make sure that they're really hitting on fractions. But since we've got these blueprints well into the start of the school year, we're having to kind of plan with what we got recently, whereas next school year, we're gonna already have all of this stuff ready and lined up for our teachers.
So along that same line, you said they'll get that data, the teachers will get the data roughly a week or 2 before they start. Is there any way to get that to them sooner? That seems like,
Yeah, they could get it sooner, but it's just with registering and the rosters, we won't know.
sure.
Right when they come
Yeah.
to pre-service, we have more of idea of their rosters, so we'll be able to get that info to them.
It just seems like
Yeah.
small.
because then we have to balance classrooms, boy, girl, we try to balance by ability so that so the teacher has a more balanced class.
Well, then,
So we're constantly looking at data to make it fair for them
and
too.
let's say you're talking 4th to 5th. Do you go back to the 4th grade teachers and say, yo, here's what your now 5th graders, this is how they performed.
Yes,
Here's, like we talked, you can get as granular as you want on these.
that's when we talk about cohort.
Yeah.
So when we say you're the 5th grade teachers, that's 4th graders, this group of kids, this is how they did
Yeah.
in 3rd and 4th grade, so what's,
But I mean, these
Well,
4th graders, I
yes.
know they've lost their kids already, but they need to know where they were good and where they weren't so good. So they know, all right, this group of kids, I don't want to make the same mistakes over again.
right.
I mean, hopefully they're doing that throughout the year, but we don't have that
So we have
comprehensive stuff
conversations,
until the end.
right, with our kinder teachers. They're, our parents tell us that we give the kids so much and we only have them do 3 things a week. And then, we talked about, they're behind, they're not gonna be ready for 1st grade. Okay, so what's our plan, guys? We need to plan, make it, take it, because we know all the kids that need to come are not gonna come to summer school. So do we plan a workshop for the parents and say, these are the 3 activities you need to do for reading, and these are the 3 for math that you must do, and how are we gonna hold them accountable even in the summer to make sure that they do that? And then we usually do Kinder Jumpstart, okay, but do we need to add 1st graders who are so low at the kinder level to come in for Kinder Jumpstart to be little role models, a little self-esteem booster? But these are the conversations we have, with our teachers, like just trying to figure it out constantly on what are we gonna do for these cohorts of kids that are struggling?
So those are all operational things. And I appreciate them from the teacher point of view and the administrator point of view. But in preparation for this meeting, what I did is I went and pulled the top 10 K through 8 schools in the country. And I laid it out and I identified their commonalities.
And what did you come up with?
The commonality is a teacher-student ratio of 14:1. So that is a board goal. How do we get, if we want to be the best, all the data indicates that smaller classrooms.
Yet, when we analyze data for the state, in our state of Arizona, in our top 20 schools, do you remember what we said the commonality was?
I think it was funding.
It was
were-
less,
They all taught a grade level up.
Yep.
First graders were receiving second grade standards, second graders were receiving third grade standards. That's what BASIS and those charter schools do. So when we talk about, when we have our kids, where do we start to teach them up? Like we talked about, do we get our first graders that are ahead of the game and start migrating them to second grade with a second grade teacher to receive those standards? Or how do we get there, right? Because you gotta start,
But that's an operational or a tactical issue.
right?
And as a board, there's nothing we can do. But there is something we can do to create a classroom environment of 14:1.
Not with our budget and not with
Well,
our
but that's our
class
problem.
sizes. I mean, not
That's
with
our
our,
problem.
we need a new school, because we.
That's our problem. Our problems are facilities, our problems are money. That's it. That's what we deal with. Curriculum, how you make it happen in the classroom, we don't do that.
I don't know financially how we would ever be able to have 14 kids in a classroom with our budget.
You'd have to effectively double
teachers.
the faculty, would you not?
Well, if you looked at the AZ auditor's report, it says that we went from 14 back in 2017 and 18, 15, to now 18 or 19, whatever it is. So how were we there and how do we get there? And we, as a board, those are the kinds of strategic issues we need to be talking about. What makes a successful K through 8 school? And that was the one thing I looked for. I pulled the top 10 K through 8 schools in the country. And that was one of the commonalities. And they weren't in the best neighborhoods. But if we want to have high-performing students and a high-quality staff, I think we can serve ourselves well by having a span of control that's conducive to exceptional learning.
It'd be great if we could find high-quality teachers. More of them, because we were at the job fair, and we're chasing teachers down and trying to attract them to come here, but I think, we'd have to have financially, the only way we are gonna be able to afford it is if we have more kids. If our enrollment increases so that we have more pupils.
Well, the more kids we have, the less chance it is of having smaller classrooms.
Right.
so I think these are all, it's a wonderful discussion, absolutely.
Yeah, it's great.
But we're not really here for all that. Because come 6 o'clock, I got a feeling we're still gonna be in the same spot we are now.
Are we
So,
on the number one still?
so when we look at
Right.
district goals, and I think, I heard you say we all agree that the goals are good. No one's gonna argue the goals.
Except I think we need to have some specificity in what the goal is in each one of these areas. So that we have some conception of what we're shooting at. The goal should be something we're shooting at. So it's high performing students, how much math growth do we want to see? Or how much improvement in AZ merit do we want to see?
So do you
If that's
want
the
the
case.
specificity in this
Yeah,
document?
I think that we modify this, and there's a section that says measures. So
So
right now,
that's
the
where we
generic, it
put-
says student achievement growth on track.
high-quality
We
staff.
put in 3%, whatever number we think.
That's done, this document.
High-quality staff, attract and retain
Slow it
quality
down.
teachers, okay? Maybe a retention goal of every teacher that's graded proficient or highly proficient, that we want 95% retention. I don't know what the right number is, but that's something that we need to work. Are all of our teachers certified? I don't know, are they?
No.
Yeah, so we've got a certain percentage of our teachers that are not certified. So what steps do we need to take to make sure we've got 100%? That should be the goal, 100% certified teachers.
And our teachers that are not certified are really good teachers because they're going through teacher programs.
So let's,
But I don't want to say 100% certified teachers, but it's again the quality of the teacher, right?
And the ones that aren't certified yet are in programs to become.
Yes.
Great.
They're working on it.
So why don't we address that when we get there?
Yeah.
I think we need to tweak the measures,
Okay.
which are gonna give dates and numbers. And some of those are already in the SIGA, right?
Right.
So we can make sure we jive there.
So then what we
And then
will
plow
do,
through, and if we have time, we can come back and then
well,
have
we
this- talk about the
can,
top 10. I think that stuff is fascinating.
Steve, so we will go through and add the timelines
Yeah.
and the
Okay.
measures to this document, and then I can send it to you. And we obviously may or may not be ready for next week. Maybe we just present it at our board meeting as a draft for you to review with the additional measures, and then we can look at the March meeting, approving it.
Yeah.
Will that work?
Do you wanna, since we've got another 50 minutes or so, kind of just walk through it as a group now, and then you can put it together in real format? Or do you wanna just handle that and send it out and we'll need to do this again?
Well, if you have some specifics in when you looked at some of the goals, but some of what we add, if we hash it out right now, I'm not sure that you will totally, completely understand what we're analyzing and what we're doing, and we need to figure out how to put it into words that will
Okay.
make sense to
Does that
you.
work for you guys?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I went through.
I just didn't wanna leave it us coming like, well, what the heck are we doing?
Right,
I went to the
discussion.
Arizona Department of Education last week to get what the definitions of an A school and B school and I mean, I don't know how they assign these things necessarily, but I saw the things that they look at. One of the things that's in there is the percentage of certificated teachers. That's one of the measurements as far as whether you get a B grade, a D grade, or an A grade. I mean, there's a whole bunch more than just that, but that's one of them. And I'm saying, I want Continental to be an A school. I want it to be an A school next year. And then maybe the year after that or 2 years after that, I want it to be an A+ school. Because that's something that we can publicize and broadcast to the community. And anybody that's looking at our school can say, wow, I want my kid to go there. And so, I'm looking at those things, and so some of those are the steps that I think we should be taking to quantify the goals that we're trying to reach. That's
good, okay. So when we look at, Kelly, do you have any specific, when you're looking at measures or anything that stuck out to you in terms of something that you would want us to be looking at? So when you look, and just one example, on the high-performing students, the first annual measure was the student achievement, right? The second one was student behavior, discipline, referrals, suspensions, and attendance rate. We do track that, but I didn't put it in this one-pager draft form because we really don't have discipline problems per se that are affecting academic progress. Our attendance rates, contrary to what teachers would say, it's the same students, but some of them are still meeting standards. So I didn't put that here on this one, but we can still have timelines and goals on what we expect. Because as we've grown, our discipline problems have grown also, but it still doesn't mean that it's high alert we need to, develop an in-school suspension class, because we're not there. High school readiness, participation in advanced coursework, and ACT. So that is something that we're working towards and that we have discussions about, but I didn't put it on here. So am I hearing that I was just trying to do like a cheat sheet
This is good.
of,
This is good too. So you, down here, you say we want 10% of eighth graders participating in ACT, for example. And have that started by semester 1, 2023, whatever it might be.
So
Doesn't
I-
belong in here. This is virtually needs to be untouched. This is the supporting document for this.
The specifics are.
So the specifics, the measures, the
So
metrics
we're
are
gonna
gonna be
just-
in there.
throw this in the trash,
No,
this one.
this is if you just want to look at it.
But this only
This is
has
all
one,
cool.
but this only has one measure to the goal. When in reality, there's
Yeah.
3 to 5 measures for each
So I
goal.
think this is designed to be kind of generic and really,
Yeah, this is
Some
like
lofty
a
summary,
one-page
just a summary.
summary, yeah.
Yeah.
Did anyone look at any of the others?
from other districts,
Yeah, from other schools.
long time ago.
We've compiled, when we did this work, we looked at other districts and other schools and other superintendents' plans and other work.
But I think we've got to be careful on, we all talk about the proficient and not proficient. If the state level is, what's the state level proficiency? 40%,
Yep.
right? That tells me a couple of things. Is the test wrong? Is it, something be, if the average in 5 million kids in the state is 40%, there's something wrong.
Well, if the test was good at measuring that, they wouldn't change it every 2 years.
You have that, right. So
And we
something,
wouldn't have
I mean, it should
entire
almost be like,
schools.
I get some districts, it should be almost like the ABC, the majority are gonna get average, with 75%, give or take. And then, just the way you expect scale A, B, and C to work in a school. But that test doesn't run that way. It never has.
How come some districts do so well?
I believe, I would say, I think that some districts do, well, this is just my opinion. I used to be at a school that was a failing school, and they brought a principal in that ended up creating a data room, who made teachers accountable for really looking at their data and not just, and understanding it, which is what we're trying to do here. And, flipped the school around. They were a F school, and within the course of 2 years, we're all the way up to a B school. And then it's hard because the higher you get, it's harder to show the growth. But in a lot of the schools that I've looked at are charter schools, and you can pick and choose who is going to remain and who is not going to be there.
A big piece of that
So-
too is the kind of parents that send their kids to that school have to make an effort. They usually have to drive the kids there themselves, and they have to drive them far away. I mean, when we're talking about bases, there are kids who are driven an hour each way by their parents to get
So
there.
they're doing 2 hours of homework in the car.
So, and also, what kind of homework do they have? That's gonna facilitate a whole lot.
And BASIS doesn't have to take Johnny that can't spell cat. We do.
So but it's not just the special ed students, it's the mediocre kids that can have parents that can hire expensive tutors or can sit down with them because they're not fried from work at the end of the day. 'Cause at least one parent stays home, or if mom just works a little bit, or they normally don't have a whole bunch of kids, so they get more one-on-one.
So how many parents come and talk to you and say, my kid's going into 3rd grade. Do you know Missy? Oh, yeah, we know. Well, what teacher do you think would fit her best?
Very few.
Right, I did it.
Yeah.
For my kids, I requested
We do it
specific,
for them. I don't think it's
And going back
impossible.
to
But-
basis though, remember also, if you recall, they don't allow visitors in the school. They don't have awards assemblies. They don't have, everything is done before school and after school. And, they just, and it's not a community culture because it's by far just, you're gonna be doing homework and back to basics all day long. So when we sit here and say we value music and PE and athletics and clubs, and we're trying to, build character, life skills, well-rounded children, those are the academia only kids. And if you have a child that excels in extracurricular, in art or music or PE, you're not gonna put them in basis. Because they're not gonna get what they need.
I agree we're never gonna be a basis, but I think you still have to shoot for something higher than, I mean, when I see this right here, the meeting the standards, that sounds awful to me. Because we all know what the standards are. And in my opinion, they're poor, very, very poor. And yeah, I agree. Continental's never gonna be a basis. We have far too much other things. I mean, it's
For
a
public
different,
school.
it's a different environment, of course. But you have to have something to shoot for. And there's no harm in saying, this is what they do right with their academic portion of it. And we can take bits and pieces of it that would suit us as a goal to shoot for. I just think it's a mistake I don't know, I think it's a mistake to shoot for the standards. I think we ought to be shooting for much higher than the standards. And if the kids struggle, then at least, but there's still gonna be some growth there. I think there's more success in a child struggling to shoot for here than to just sort of skate along and make it to here. I don't know, that's,
Could we, as a board, fighting what we are up against as a public school, as a board, can we request, say, we want to see more money available for more late bus runs and after-school tutorials? Because my two older kids I was very absent. I was a single mom. I had to work constantly, and when I got home, I could not even spell my name, much less help them with their homework. And after-school tutorial got them through school. And if it wasn't for after-school tutorial, they probably, I don't know, it would be doing as well
Our
as they
tax
are
credit
now.
funds cover after-school tutorials to pay teachers, they pay athletics, and they pay all our clubs. So that's how much tax credit funding
So that gets back to
So we
what
do
everybody's saying.
offer-
You come to us and say, hey,
we do offer.
for us to do this, just like you came to us and said, we need a math specialist. Boom. Hey, we need this. That's a great idea, but we can't afford it. Let's see what we can do for next year, right?
But can we do homework clubs? Let's do
Whatever
homework
all
clubs
that
after school.
is.
We have them. It's just very hard to get our kids, our parents to commit to send their kids
That's it.
on a regular basis. We're we're begging, pleading, sending letters. They are behind. They need to come to school. We're filing the fact that they're not staying. I mean,
Well, if we're selling what they're not buying, I think we're selling the wrong product.
We have been inviting kids to Saturday school. We have at least 1 or 2 sessions a month. And I actually got a response from what the teachers refer to the kids, for the kids who have C's or below in content and could benefit from that, either the tutorial or the Saturday school. I actually got a letter back on the permission slip that the parent declined it. My child does not want to come to Saturday school. We will work on it at home. So if nothing else, maybe if they really do that and take that option, then maybe we're just making one more communication to let them know that if they thought they were addressing it before, they really need to pay more attention to it as well.
Because we're getting so good at online, do we have an online option that parents could sit with a kid and do a 10 or micro learning is what we're using in industry now. You know, you want to learn how to create a pivot table, you learn it in 10 minutes in a micro-learning online session. That's what YouTube has done.
If you're lucky enough to find the parent that will take the time to do it. That is the reality. I mean, it's unfortunate, it's awful, frankly, but,
Our kids are very involved in club sports after school. They're in ballet, they're in soccer, they're in
The
gymnastics.
percentage is off the charts.
Yeah, they pick them up early out of school because they have to drive across town to gymnastics and ballet and stuff. And we're saying, like today we had a little weird, mom was here for a doctor's appointment. I'm like, can you ask her to give us 5 minutes? Like we need her daughter for 5 minutes, the second grader who is super below level that we're trying to figure out how we're gonna get her to read. And, you know, we're begging parents to not take their kids out because we need their children.
So what you just said, we have the ability for somebody at your guys' level to get that granular to one second grade kid. Nobody else is doing that. And good for us and you, but it's how we implement that to get all this. I mean, obviously that's down in bushes, but, and we encourage that, right?
But we just said that our parents are picking their kids up, driving across town to get them in some swim club or tennis club or something like that. So we must be selling something they don't want to buy. How do we repackage? What product is it that we need to sell that moves our kids?
I can assure you it's not athletics. Sorry to interrupt, but I can assure you it's not athletics. What I've seen from so many schools is Continental is top notch when it comes to the availability of sports. I think Continental is phenomenal for sports. I mean, there's issues with some of the, you know, we have to do some work on facilities and things like that. But personally, I really don't think we could always do better, but we're certainly doing a good job on sports. After school, I think we are.
When we
But you
had
cannot sit here and write a document that says, thou must do that to these parents. The parents can go tell you to take a hike. They've got things to do, they've got bills to pay, they might have to be at work on Saturday morning. And I would love to have that, you know, to say, hey, let's get the kids here on Saturday morning to get caught up in whatever they're not doing so well. But if their parents aren't behind them, I don't know what to do. What are we supposed to do? I mean, that's the.
Right, and I feel like our kids are amazing, well-rounded, respectful kids. When we had the Mostly Kosher group come, they were floored by the amazing behavior of our middle school kids, the level of questions that they asked about music and the instruments. And I mean, they were saying, this was amazing. They said they're willing to come back. When our kids went to Just Talk at the high school, our kids at Continental stick out as good kids, leaders. They're not running around like the Anza kids. They're not, and when we talk to high school teachers, they can identify kids that came out of Continental. So and academically, they can also, their study skills, their habits, so we know we're doing things right. But we do have to have, you know, more of our kids show what they know on state assessments. Because our kids do know it. When we had our presentation, we met with the data analysts from NWA MAP. Every single grade level showed growth. And she said, that's not the norm right now. In schools that she met with, the bar graph was below 0. She said, you guys need to celebrate that every single grade level demonstrated growth. That is not happening across the nation. But are we satisfied with that? No, because we're still very worried about our kids who are not here yet and that achievement gap and what's happened the last 2 years.
Yeah, you know, I think Kelly brought up an excellent point when she said her own experience as far as awfully busy when she came home from work and really couldn't help with homework and all that, and the importance of after school tutoring or Saturday tutoring or whatever. To me, if that would be an example of something that Continental could provide to attempt to address some of the parental issues, which I personally think is the single most important important to a child's education, then to me, we would charge the administration, we would charge Mr. Schubert. Okay, let us know what it would cost to do 2 hours of after-school tutoring every day and make that available, and then 2 hours on Saturday morning. And if we have to have vans go around and pick up people to bring them to school on Saturday morning, what does that cost? And then say, what would we have to give up in other areas of the budget in order to fund that specific objective? And that to me is how you address gaps and try to solve some of the problems with some of the kids that need some extra help, that they may not be getting that kind of supervision or that kind of encouragement at home. So it's just an example. That to me is a board charge saying, we want to know what it would take. What would you have to do within the budget to fund this? And if you say, well, we'd have to give up this and this and this, then the board can make a decision as to whether those are prudent decisions or not.
So I think it's a valid point that you made there, that it's one thing to have a Saturday school here, but it's a very different thing to have a van that will go pick up Susie to bring her here. Because that's probably, I'm guessing, that's potentially a big part of the, no, I can't check that box because I have to work, or I have other things to do. And I can't get my child there on Saturday.
Which
So
is a valid point, but I did have that conversation with a couple of parents who stated that concern, and we've offered that. We have the school vans.
And they said-
Mr. Lathan and I have offered that.
And did it change much or?
It didn't change at the time. No, both sets said, I can't commit to that. We only have one vehicle. I have to get to work. I won't be home. Lots of, I
Life
don't
gets in the
know.
way.
I don't know exactly. It didn't
Yeah.
really answer it.
So it's not that I disagree with any of it, but it's the reality of getting the parents on board. How do you do that? That's a huge challenge. I don't-
Maybe we have a town hall meeting with all our kids that are not meeting standards, and you as the board sit here and say, what do you need?
Mhm.
Because this is our goal, and this is our plan, but what do you need? Because we offer Saturday school, after-school tutorials, homework help, reteach and enrich.
What else can we do?
So I had a little harebrained idea I just emailed to myself based on what Ms. Heiss said about, the micro-learning. And when you said that, my mom is like the biggest fan in the world of Khan Academy, and that's their method to do like 1 minute or 2 minute lessons on one little thing. We should make our own Khan Academy. And have all the teachers, they have to be required to make like 1 or 2 videos a week of like one little standard and teach the kids how to look it up on their little cell phone. So while they're sitting there at the dinner table crying over their homework and their mom's mad and making dinner, and dad hasn't gotten home from work yet, they can like, oh, I'm, like look up Mrs. Johnson's Khan Academy and figure out how to work this problem.
On the Chromebook that we issued them.
Yeah.
So that's like our own online video resource.
Like database.
Or they can even say, here's a link to a 2-minute video on Google, or like I saved $100 because I did a YouTube on how to fix my garage door. Took me 3 seconds after I knew how to do it.
And our teachers and our kids do use Khan Academy already, but
I think it
it's
would be something special and something different,
to see your teacher.
having and having all the teachers collaborate on it. Like, if I'm in 3rd grade, I can pull up all the 3rd grade teachers teaching, I have access to all that grades, little.
Well, you know what they do in high school? I think I told you this. So in my son's chemistry and geometry class, when they introduce something new, generally speaking, the kids get to a team and they do a TikTok or some type of video. And then you should library the best ones. There's a resource of peer, I know that's getting too cold. But what is a teacher, awesome. When you look a parent in the eye, this
Yes,
underachieving kid, and you tell them, here's what your kid needs, and here's what we're willing to do to help. What do they say? I mean, I know it's probably all over the map. You probably get just some sense, sorry, I don't know.
some of them are struggling with how to motivate their kids themselves, dealing with behaviors or multiple kids in the house. Some require more attention than the other. They say, we're doing homework, we're trying, we're working on it. I don't think anybody says, I don't care and I don't want to help.
Some are struggling to pay the light bill.
I think
You know,
parents
and
are,
and
yeah.
they can care less about, I hate to say this, but when you can't feed your kids and you've got a light bill to pay for and you might get kicked out of your rental or whatever, the last thing you care about is summers or, Saturday school.
And they just take a meta lesson in Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Just go right back to that. When you're worried about food, clothing, and shelter, you're not too concerned about what's next.
Self-actualization doesn't come into play when you're working on your survival skills. And the variables, when you talk to parents, I've never heard a parent say, I'm sorry, I just don't care.
Yeah.
But the variables identified in those conversations are as unique and individualized as the family scenario or situation. Some kids, anything from the change of custody happens on Saturday, and so they go to the other parent, to the fact that they're in a sport, and even though they're battling with eligibility, they will do certain things but can't commit a Saturday because they're in that sport if they have reobtained eligibility. I mean, the variables go on and on. One boy did tell us that he has a 7-year-old brother at home. He can't be gone on Saturday because dad has to work on Saturday. And there's a lot of variables. It's really hard to, I have never heard a parent, and I shudder to think about it, I've never heard a parent say, I'm sorry, I just don't care enough to make
Does
that.
a parent ever say they don't have the
They
skills
do
to
this
help?
Smart enough to say other stuff.
They're smart enough to say,
Yeah,
Some-
parents will say they don't have.
Back
I
to
said
our
it here.
Holt Academy, we're
Fourth grade math,
circumventing
so
the problem of the parents.
I really like
And
that.
putting the charge back into the kids.
Yeah, because I have had teachers say, I don't even know how to help them. Parents say, I don't even know how to help them at home because I didn't learn the math that way. What you're teaching now, I've
I have
never
a wife
seen.
who's an engineer that said that. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
One
that
thing we
was
have to
one
That's
remember
a hard
idea.
math, eighth grade math.
Every school in Arizona has some of these problems.
Yeah.
I was looking at the list of the top 10 elementary schools in Tucson. Only 4 of them are charter schools or private schools. Only 4. 5 are elementary district public schools. And so, they've got underperforming kids, they've got sped kids. They don't get to choose their kids like a charter or private school can. And so they all have some of these issues to address. There's no question about it. So, what can we do with our kids to get in that group of top
So
10?
that's why I was
Play the
raising my
hammer down.
hand, because I wanted to continue on and say that we can be the A school and not an A school that's in the 40s just because we showed growth. Because that's not what I want to be an A school, but not an A school that because we showed big jumps in growth, we're in the 40s and 50s. I want to be in A school where we're in the 80s and 90s. And one of the biggest things that's testament to your work as our board members and what you've done is helped with, in years before, I believe Ms. Rico came, and then as I came on, there were, where I think we're at the end here, where a lot of our students are now moved on to high school. But there was a long time where there was curriculum, everybody was kind of doing their own thing. So that's one thing that's a big gap here, that where I think in my past 3 years here, and what Ms. Rico, this is your 6th year, 5th year, it's gonna take us time to get everything aligned. So having the math curriculum, which you have approved, this is really a big deal here, a reading curriculum, where we're gonna have alignment. We're meeting on Wednesday to have a common alignment across all grade levels for weekly testing, for benchmarks. So that way, when I say testing, I mean, if they're teaching inferences for 2 weeks in one grade, they're gonna be giving the same type of online test that the kids will take. And it'll look the same test that they'll be taking in kindergarten all the way, like the format of it. And that's one thing we're gonna be working with Linkit, so that we have a common testing database. So when the teachers give their weekly test on the math standards that they're learning, or the ELA, the reading or writing standards, at the end of every week, their kids are gonna take a 3 to 4 question test, and immediately once they turn it in, they're gonna know, this group of them got it, this group didn't. I have to pull this group and I need to teach them. Instead of what had been happening and what was going on is, it's spray and pray kind of thing. Like, you know, we're gonna teach it, hope that they get it, we're moving on to the next thing. That's not working. That's what we have to fix. You're right, we don't need to be a basis, we don't need to be a charter school. I see that is a trend that helps too. You know, we've had some students that we take in here with loving arms and open arms that have come from Lean Academy, from basis, because of behavioral issues that they weren't dealing with, so parents have come and brought them here. That's okay. We're gonna love them, we're gonna teach them, we're gonna embrace them, and they're gonna be successful, because that's the attitude we have about it. We are gonna be an A school, we're gonna be an A+ school, we're gonna move our kids, but it starts with aligning curriculum across all grade levels. So when our kids get into middle school, we didn't have just, you know, certain grades that were teaching some writing stuff, but then it wasn't taught in this grade, but then it wasn't this grade. Now they're over here and now they're not understanding stuff. Alignment is key. Outcomes of students and getting on those outcomes, whether they're need enrichment and they need to continue to be challenged and moved so that they don't fall, or because they need to be helped and there needs to be quick intervention. They need to be, and having more communication with parents and saying, hey, you know what? I'm working with your children this week. I need them for after school tutorials. This is a must. So it's changing our systems, being strategic with our system, having things in place so it's not, we have all these wonderful resources, but how are we going to utilize them so that they're successful with our students? So I feel like I'm super excited about where we're going, because now we are getting alignment across all grade levels. What First Kinders teaches, guess what? Now they're going to be able to collaborate because they have a common curriculum. They're not just pulling stuff off of the internet. They're not buying stuff off of Teachers Pay Teachers. They're not trying to come up with their own things. And we're moving into one door's closing, another door's opening, and we're getting there. So those letter grades, what bugs me about them is I remember years ago I sat in an assembly and I heard, and it was not here, but I heard clapping in a school turned into an A school, and I remember sitting there just thinking, how can they be celebrating that when they're in the 30 percentiles?
Bingo. Good point.
And parents don't know that when they see my friends will call me sometimes and say, hey, this is an A school, but this is a B school, and I'm gonna send my kid to that, do you have advice? And I always say, well, go also and look at, you know, what are the percentages? Because people will think, I'm gonna send my kid to this A school, but they might still also be, you know, we don't wanna be that B school. Right now we're a B school, but that was given to us before I think I've been here, because we haven't had a letter grade since before I came. So that B letter that we have was from 2018, 2019 school year, since they haven't been giving letter grades since then. But there was a lot going on that led to that. I think before that was a B, it was an A, right? Am I correct in that?
Yeah, we were in.
And then it went to a B. But now we gotta get our little ducks in order and get to work and
The reason
get
why
the job
we
done.
went to a B was because in the formula, the percentage of average kids we didn't move any average kids into exceeding, into meeting. So that was, we were like a point off from the A.
But
That was that number in the formula that.
every school can go up to 70% of students meeting and exceeding the state standards in ELA and mathematics. We will get there. We will get there. Unless you guys fire me, I don't plan on going anywhere for a very long time. I have big dreams and goals for this place. This is where my heart is, this is what I'm passionate about, and it's tricky. It's like, Shelly, you talk a lot about crunching numbers, looking at things, and the way you think is what we have to think, how we have to think about things. We have to tweak things. We have to see, okay, you know, Albert and I and Mr. Lathan were looking at the cohort trends the other day and thinking, okay, how are we gonna, how do these trends change? And it's pretty crazy because over the course of 5-6 years, we already have Ames, then we had AZ Merit, now we have AZ Sci, now we have AASA. So,
Galileo.
yeah, so there's just different things. But in the end, all that matters is we have to keep it simple. We have to have a simple system in place to monitor where our kids are.
We say that with our 5 different evaluations.
Yeah.
Because if it was that simple.
But it can be that simple.
Yeah.
It can be that simple when we get out of the weeds and just start looking at what's really
Yeah.
important. Kids have to be in school, so attendance is important. Kids have to be able to interact with their teacher, so small class sizes are important. Kids need books that aren't older than their teacher, so curriculum is important. Discipline is important.
And uniformity from kindergarten all the way
Yes.
through. We've never had that.
But we're going to. Yep. We're right there.
The curriculum is gonna include the tier 3 that's in alignment
And-
with what
And
everybody
it's
else
gonna
is
now be
doing.
aligned with EL, with our EL students. There'll be
Yeah.
alignment with our special education. And we asked about gifted education, the components that go with these curriculums. It's exciting because one of the biggest things that we talk about with our teachers is, what do we need here? And one of the things I heard was alignment. We need to, when they jump from one grade, it needs to be that we're not all over the place in the next grade. There needs to, so that's what we've been working on throughout these past 2.5 years. But I'm excited. I'm excited that you have been supportive of what we needed to do, especially with this curriculum. This is huge.
Well, everybody knows that Mrs. Smith used to cry when she got Mrs. Jones's kids from 2nd to 3rd grade because she knew they weren't going to be able to read and all the challenges that she was going to face. And if you're fixing that, that's a huge fix. So I think, you know, I think the 5 goals that you've identified are pretty standard for everything I've seen. They're worded a little bit differently, but they're all there. And the fact that there's only 5 is a good idea. We usually say in a strategic plan to have 3 to 5 goals. Make sure they align with the mission statement. And I think that's there.
So we will go in and we will put in specifics on the measures and the timelines. And then we'll send you a draft that we can review at the next board meeting.
Just email me one.
Okay. I won't make copies, but
And there is something that I would like to ask that we do need help with. And I know, you know, with COVID, there has been a lot of absences. But in looking at the trends over the course of the past 3 to 4 years, there's a high level of absenteeism. And I know when I came, there was a group of some teachers that had been working on it in the past, had concerns about absenteeism. And, you know, we don't want to dictate what people do throughout the year. We can't really police it either. But if we could relook at the policies that we have in place for attendance so that, you know, we don't have truancy officers anymore. We have SRO that we could go and do home visits and stuff, but there's really nothing that we can use to really get parents to understand that we need their kids here.
So you're talking above and beyond, outside of COVID?
Yeah.
You're talking just general?
Moving forward, I really would like us to, you know, get input from our teachers, but also to come together and come up with, look back at what are our policies. Like certain districts create their own types of policies. You're absent so many times. One of the things Mr. Lathan and I, when we came back from January, asked Jenna to pull who are those that are consistently tardy and absent, so that my first year here and last year, we started having meetings where we would give contracts to the parents and talk to them and with the student, and then that worked. But we want to be able to go back and look and see what are our district policies. If people are booking 2-week cruises in the middle of a school year, are those excused or unexcused, kind of, you know what I mean?
Could you put together some data for us to say, you know,
Yes, we've had
all
three.
the absences that we've had over the last year, 35% were COVID related,
Yes.
either quarantines or isolation. This was because the parents took them on vacation,
Yes.
so on and so forth.
Yes.
That may help.
But I think you need to have some substance behind it. You can say all you want, we want you at school, but if you don't have any way to enforce it, then you need.
That's what I,
Well,
you
like,
need
I've
to
looked at
consequence.
district, I've looked at other boards, boards, policies that they've instituted in districts, and it's very, this is what's going to happen,
Pretty clear.
you'll have, these are the consequences, these are excused, these are unexcused, you'll have to go, kind of what the steps would be.
kind of like requiring summer school or Saturday
Yes,
school in
something.
order to be promoted.
Yes,
But does that work? That's the
I think
question.
I think it,
Punishment.
You have to enforce it, you have to enforce it.
but we need to have our board support in moving forward with this, because this is huge.
That's right, because the parents are gonna come to the board, and if the board wavers and says,
Yeah.
oh, but you know what, grandma was only available that month for us to go on the cruise.
It's really good, it was a Disney cruise.
Well, it's fine, but they can make it up. They gotta make it up somewhere.
We'll see, but that's what they do. All our parents who take their kids out for long extended vacations or whatever, it's usually military. If they're deployed and the husbands are in this state and the mom is gonna take the kids and go there, they're very responsible and say, we'll get the work and we'll make it up. And they
should
do.
make it up
But,
in the school, like in Saturday school or summer school.
right, so they do make it up, and, we have to look at, did that attendance really affect the grade? Well, not if they made it up and not if they did it, but it's still irritating to the teachers that kids are randomly not here. Like when I send you the reports on how many kids were out for COVID, there's usually 25 to 30 kids that are out for miscellaneous, non-sickness related.
No excuse, nothing,
Looking at the year before COVID, there was 3,000 absences.
3,000.
Right now, with COVID at January, we're at 4,000.
And with the state now, because remember funding with attendance, so as long as the parent tells us where they are, whether we agree that it's a good place to be or not, it's an excused absence. So parents, our hands are tied because there aren't truancy officers, there's nothing at the state level that says if you miss 10 absences, you're gonna be dropped. I mean, that's 10 absences, you're dropped if you're a no-show completely. But there's
That's unexcused,
nothing,
that would be the unexcused, any absence that's defined as unexcused.
right,
10 consecutive unexcused absences
Right.
is the mandatory 10
and so
days.
our kids don't do that, they'll be gone maybe 3 additional days or tack on 3 or 4 days before a holiday or after a holiday. But our hands are really tied in terms of make up the work or to fix your grade, and that's pretty much all we can do. Because before you had truancy officers, we could report it to juvenile courts, and then juvenile courts would fine the parents for kids not being in school. And juvenile courts, they're doing bigger things. They're not worried about truancy right now. So it goes back to what can we do as a school to fix our own little problem per se.
Well, and I think also relating it to the kids that are not making it up or
Right.
not performing,
Yes.
and you can really tie it to absenteeism. Because there are gonna be kids that were out for 15 days and they're still in the proficient or highly proficient areas, so.
Well, great conversation. I appreciate your time and your feedback, and that helps us. And I really think we'll entertain maybe a town hall to get these parents together. But I think they need to see us, as a unified front, saying we're all in this and we're all owning the problem. So let's come up with some solutions.
Do we have anything planned before next Monday's meeting?
No.
A barbecue or?
Barbecue,
At
steak.
your house? You just got to my house on the way.
Foul before our meeting.
Do we wanna
Mrs.
do,
Tice, Mr. Early, can you send me those lists that you guys, when you checked for the schools and the national rankings? So we can have those to compare, please.
do we want to do a study session this coming Monday or at a different time? To study revised revision that you did? Or just do it by email?
I don't think that they were put this in.
I think you're gonna put it as a draft, right?
We're gonna put it as a draft
Yeah, that's what I mean.
for the board meeting, but if you want to do it
I don't know.
as a study
I just
session
think that's
prior
something you should
to,
do or not.
Well, was your intention on the draft to
Yeah.
approve it now?
no, we could do the draft like we mentioned and discuss it at the board meeting, and then we could go for approval in March.
Okay, let's do that.
And whatever we discuss next week, then we can still tweak and send another
And then
draft.
once you send the email, we can come back and say, that ain't what we were talking about.
Right.
Or, boy, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
Or in between.
yeah, or let's add this, or let's
Okay.
take this off.
And if you want attendance to become important, you have to make it important.
Yeah.
That's not.
And I expect people at the basketball game tomorrow, no excuses. It's a great game.
4:30?
They're so good.
They are so much fun.
4:30.
You're missing out if you're not there.
Well, they start at 3:45 with C team, but by the B team then plays, and then A team usually starts at 4:30. 5 o'clock.
So, and just
Tall blonde.
for the, learning walks tomorrow, Ms. Dosterty, you're gonna be here in the afternoon for
Yes.
the learning walk. And I don't know if,
Morning, you said it's what, 8 to noon?
uh-huh,
I have a meeting in town at 12:15 or so. Can I
yes.
book you by 11 or 11:30?
Sure. Yeah, because you'll see that we go through 3 teachers and go through the process 3 times. So
Okay.
even if you get the first and the second, you
Okay.
don't have to go to the third.
So if you're at 8 then?
Okay.
And when is it in April?
April 24th or 26th? Let me see.
Don't you leave, I haven't.
April 26th.
So we're gonna recess
Sorry,
for a minute to
next
sign some vouchers for Greg. They're brand new, starting at number 1. And they're not Xerox, whatever you call this kind of paper. Just do one at a time so you don't bleed through the next one. Yeah.
Sounds right.
We're renumbering.
I'm sorry?
We're renumbering the
Not your already
claim
bought
vouchers.
We bought,
It's gonna bleed through the other one.
dual copy vouchers, carbon copy vouchers, so that we always have a copy on file here, instead of our copy going to county. And we just started a pre-numbering with 0001. Keep going forward from there.
There's 10 of them, just to get your expectations.
So this will be in addition to the 8 that are outstanding right now.
Yeah, well, there's only one left.
Okay,
There's only one blank left.
all right.